Our story is called Gnome or Mr. Nice Guy by Mary Waters. I found it funny at first when a garden gnome appeared unexpectedly in my backyard. My sense of humour vanished when another four joined it the next day. Pete seemed the obvious culprit, although he denied all knowledge of it when I accused him. Naturally, the jokes started from everyone at work when they heard about it. Tell them to go gnome. They think they're on gnome man's land, from Pete. By the weekend, there were 10 red-cheeked, twinkly-eyed gnomes with an assortment of fishing rods, wheelbarrows and pails, all silently facing in the same direction, my kitchen window. A few days later, I counted 35 of the ugly little monsters. I strolled among them to count, reluctant to touch or look them in the eye. Silly, I know, but they unnerved me. This went beyond a joke. Why was I being stalked by gnomes? Sandy came round and helped me take them to the tip and agreed it was weird. It's a bit like those old portraits. Felt as if their eyes were following me around. It had to be someone at work, but still no one admitted it. Sandy told them how she'd felt. They mostly sniggered. Pete said, "Can you catch insanity?" When I woke the next day, the gnomes were back. All 35. Spooky. That night, I heard music. And when I looked out, the gnomes were dancing. Sandy said it must have been a dream, and Pete suggested I stop drinking. When 5 of them turned up in the house, I realised I'd been wrong. They weren't ugly. Naturally, nobody believed me when I said they talked. Sandy said, "Can you talk gnomish?" "Kiss one, they might turn into a prince," said Pete. "Isn't that frogs?" Pete grinned. "Yes, Sandy, because it's true." Well, nothing lost, nothing gained. I kissed one, and he turned into a gorgeous hunk. When I told Pete, he asked if there were any females. They're all male by the look of it. How can you tell? Beards, clothes, deep voices, normal things. Normal? When 20 gnomes lived in the house, their words became clearer. The hunk explained a few words, and I knew it wouldn't be long before I understood them. A week later, the rest of the gnomes moved in. The hunk told me the gnomes transformed him into one of them, and I'd freed him with a kiss. I asked how they caught him. He muttered something about amnesia, glanced away and refused to talk about it. The next morning, he'd gone. I kissed another one, but nothing happened. I stopped going to the office. 34 small house guests are hard work. They were awake all night, every night, dancing. I had no idea where the music came from, though once or twice I saw one blow into his watering can as if it were a trumpet. By now I understood nearly every word they said. Sandy phoned and asked what they talked about. Weather, fishing, gardening and dancing mostly. Sometimes they huddle together in small groups and whisper. Everyone's entitled to some privacy, so I usually go off to another part of the house. It's your house. Tell them to go into the garden and chat. That's where they belong. A gnome told me I was the chosen one. I feel incredibly special. It's weird though. I haven't eaten for a while and I don't feel hungry. The gnomes say I don't need food anymore. Just as well. I don't think I can reach the cooker or even the fridge door. Never noticed how much inanimate objects get bigger before. My mobile's huge. And you'll never guess, the gnomes have grown taller. It sounds wrong to me, Jenny. Fridges and phones don't grow. The gnomes say we're going into the garden to dance tonight. It's a full moon. Please don't go. It sounds wrong. Dangerous. Don't be silly. I'll be fine. The gnomes are harmless. I'm Sandy. I need to take up the tale now. Pete and I popped round to see Jenny immediately after our conversation to stop her dancing with the gnomes, but she ignored the doorbell. I peeked in the window and she was surrounded by garden gnomes. She held a fishing rod in her hands. It sounds daft, but either she was crouched down low or she'd shrunk. Pete said, even if she's not eating, people can't shrink that much. Let's call the police. And tell them garden gnomes are holding her hostage. The next morning we returned to her house, but all we found were 35 lifeless gnomes in the garden. They're not all male, said Pete. The female one's pretty and shiny. She looks brand new. This morning I woke up and found a gnome in my garden. Well, I shall be keeping an eye on this little guy from now on, I can assure you. Thanks to Mary Waters for that story.